I messaged them
In high school,
saying like,
we're like tier 3 with like arts and tier 2 with math were kind of on the verge. And so there's a really big focus.
what do you want?
We have a new principal this year, and we have a year and a half interim principal off of.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, and so I'm just like really love this and the four purpose, and I think it's really good for what I do. I mean, in general, really makes sense. The struggle with how to bring two schools successful, especially when my teachers get together and you can see there being some misalignment of what those teachers might see. And just being able to.
Thank you.
If they were testing with her, they probably would.
That's good, isn't it?
But they don't talk. So it's like, I think I was so tired of them. They went. Somebody covered and then we're like, they were awfully chatty. So I said, all right, cool. We'll see if you're still chatty or.
I do, yeah. Yeah, it is nice to have different things to learn, a lot of different stuff.
I have one.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, so UVA is not letting this.
Yeah.
What about you?
And then Monticello is they're moving around like because of that they're not as they weren't able to.
No one's trying.
No, I am.
So Wednesday.
Yeah, that's.
From what I understand, it's very volatile. There might be. Just the bill.
But she's super good.
Yeah, that's what.
I just did a
Yeah, especially for small. That's something I'm trying to think about. It's always hard, no matter how. Because it is crazy.
We sat in a by ourselves. I'm not taking credit for all this. I was fortunate enough to get yes. I said, but you know, Tim is.
We walk fast.
So they're gonna use small fish. Yes. Small chairs. Did you do your last couple? That was a I ordered. Yes, because we went on holiday. We went on the back door because I had to get ready for festival. Last night was the Lindsay was talking about it all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
This? No, this is.
It's really like that.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Right?
It's just like that's.
It's liquid.
Yeah, that Maybe I'll just.
What I'm not, just keep asking us here for a while.
So, but
Before we.
I'll let you guys present that. Send it to the.
Here,
I mean, how's your session go?
what's that?
Here in Gainesville.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm at the new school in Madden, so better.
Oh, it's really close to you.
That's great. Well, you guys are gonna get tomorrow. It is grim.
All right, well, hi, everybody. Hi. Hey. If you haven't already, this is gonna be a useful tool today because all of the resources that I'm talking about can be accessed through this Wakelet. I just want to preface everything by saying whatever I share with you today, you're welcome to use, share, copy, change, alter, whatever. So if there's anything in that Wakelet that you'd like and like to adapt or just use as is, please feel free. That being said, my name is Lindsay Kraus. So I'm an instructional technology coach at Gainesville Middle School, which is part of Prince William County. I've been working with Prince William since 2013. This is my second year as an ITC. So it's a great time to start, middle of the pandemic. But I'm going to be sharing with you guys a lot of things today. So like I said, this is where you're going to want to access most of that stuff. In there, you're going to find that I even created a Canvas course for you. So there's a Canvas course that you can access with like a million resources added to it, all broken down by category. So you're welcome to enroll in that. And again, use whatever I provide for you. So the link that is in the Wakelet should take you right to that Canvas course. All right, so let's get started. All right, so the basis of today, what we're going to be talking about is student-led learning. Specifically, I'm going to talk about 3 different strategies that I use to integrate student-led learning in all of my classes. Those are choice, so student choice, the use of playlists, and the use of protocols. And I'm going to show you guys some apps and ideas that I actually used, and I'm going to provide you guys with templates and different examples of what the students came up with. Although I've taught secondary for all of my teaching career, I also worked with another ITC in our county, Rochelle Allen, and she provided elementary options as well. So there's something for everybody in here. So I'm going to show you guys what I did in secondary and how that can be adapted for elementary. And if you guys have questions at any point, feel free to ask, jump in. So we're going to start off with just some ideas. So I want to know from you guys, what do you know from the start? What is student-led learning? If you're not sure, if you have no idea, and this is the first time you're hearing about it, that's fine too. But you can go to menti.com. It's www.menti.com. And that's your code, 35499130. You can enter more than once, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what you'd expect to see in a classroom that uses student-led learning. So I'm actually going to put that up on the board. I'm just going to give you guys a second to pull this up, but the code will be on the board when I share the responses as well. All right, so as you guys add your responses, the bigger words, if you've never used this before, the bigger words are the more popular ones. So right now it's pretty equal. What's that?
Like they can't access the Canvas.
Yeah,
It's not working?
it says that we need to be Prince William.
I see. Okay. So I'll put it in Sketch later where I'll put it in like my personal one. I'll just copy the course over and you guys can access that instead. You won't need it for this course. It's just resources. So I'll update that. All right. So I see things that are saying personalized. It's a big one. Flexible. Seeing engagement a lot. That's a huge one for this. Content creators. I like it. There's a lot of talk about interest, being productive, a lot of different versions of the word engage. So I like that. Collaboration, huge. So I'm going to be showing you guys real life examples of what I did. Just some context while you're filling this in. So before I became an ITC, I had a classroom where I was asked to create a blended learning environment. So this was the year before the pandemic. And so I had 34 or 5 kids in my classroom, and I had 20 laptops and I was asked to try and make it work. And so I did. And so what I'm showing you guys is that while I did all this stuff, there was still less technology that a lot of our one-to-one schools have today. And so we can do it. We can do it together, okay? If you ever want some advice, please reach out because I could show you what I did. All right, so that was just something I wanted to show you for Mentimeter. All right, go back. All right, so whenever I work with students, I think of Bloom's taxonomy. I like a classroom to be balanced, using a mix of lower order and higher order thinking skills. And typically in a classroom, you're going to see a mix of both. And if not, then that's the goal. And so the strategies I'm going to be showing you today focus on higher order thinking skills and working with a foundation of the lower order things that the students are aware of. So we're going to be talking about creating, analyzing, and evaluating today, and some application as well of what they know. And this is also in the Wakelet, and I'll show you here. This is a really great infographic of different ways that you can use different tools according to Bloom's taxonomy. We'll revisit it, but I just wanted you to have it in your head because this is a great reference to use later as well after today, after you see what we've done for you to use in your own classrooms. Same with this one. All right, so the first thing I'm going to be talking about is choice. It's one of my favorite strategies to use in a classroom. So when it comes to choice, there's a lot of benefits to providing choice to our students. Number one, they love it. They love being given a choice any age, kindergarten to 12th grade. They like to have choices, right? Nobody likes to be told what to do, especially middle schoolers. So one of the ways that I found was really engaging for them was to give them options. And I'll show you some options that are provided for students, but it really helps them buy into what they're doing, especially if they're the ones who came up with the idea. They also, I noticed, started showing a lot more confidence in what they were doing. So the more that they were able to try and sometimes fail and sometimes do well, the more they went on, they were able to do it better and they were more confident to try new things. So the ways that I've provided choice and ways that you can provide choice can be big or small. So I think now you've probably heard about choice a lot. We talk about choice words all the time. You'll probably see a lot of presentations at this conference about choice words, and they're wonderful, but they're not the only way to provide choice. Sometimes it's small. Sometimes it is a warm-up and you just give them a choice between two different prompts. So you can start there and see how they do. Or you can have them choose a bunch of different prompts or write a bunch and you can put them out throughout the year. You can let them choose their pace, how they work on something, or the strategies that they use, or even the app that they use to create something. So choice doesn't always look really complicated. Sometimes it's small, and that's great too. So even just starting there and seeing how your kids do and working them up towards the bigger things can be a really good strategy as well. The one thing I said that I decided for myself when I decided to start giving my students a lot of choice, again, I'll show you what that looks like, is it was much easier just to figure it out from the beginning. So I'm not talking about the beginning of the year, I just mean say the beginning of a lesson or a unit and say, okay, I know what I'm going to use for my students and we're just going to work up to that. So if I knew that I wanted to use 3 different strategies, I would start by slowly introducing those to my students one by one. And eventually, once they were comfortable with those tools or comfortable with those strategies, then I would give them a choice of all of them. But I wouldn't do it all at once. Because what's going to happen then is you're going to sit in your classroom and you're going to say, okay, I have to spend a week just teaching them these tools or learning these tools with them, and that's not efficient. So when you're providing choice, being efficient is super important. So I want to show you actually what that looks like. The other thing I wanted to say, when it comes to providing choice, and I might be a little biased because I am an instructional coach, but ITRT, ITCs, IFTs, whatever it might be, utilize them. So that is a huge piece of advice I have, because we have a lot of resources provided for teachers who can give you different options for choice. So for example, last month, I had a teacher who wanted students to create a comment or a graphic of what they were doing. And so I was able to help her choose 3 different ways that the students could produce something. And I helped her create the how-to videos for the students to reference in Canvas. She told me what they needed to know, and I helped her implement it. So while she knew what she wanted the kids to do and how to get there, I was able to help her make it happen. So it was a team effort. And it wasn't one more thing for the teacher, it was just one more thing for the students to show what they know. So it ended up being really beneficial. So if you look in the weight clip, it's a big one. I think it says there's 85 items. I add things a lot. I did provide a whole section on choice boards here. So there's a lot of guides for it. There's even templates. And I made an infographic that gives some examples of what you could do to provide choice. So in response types, project types, topic choices, etc. I'm going to be going over project types today that I did with my students. These are some other ways that you can provide choice for your students. And then there's also some templates in both Google and PowerPoint for choice boards already that are pre-made that you can utilize in your LMS, and different ways of using them. So if you're interested in going bigger with a choice board, that's one of the ways that you can do that. All right, next one. This is near and dear to my heart. So you might have heard about playlists before. I honestly, when I did this, I didn't know how to name. I just did it. But I'm gonna do this thing again. Every time I was trying to figure out a way, like I said, I had 20 laptops and 35 kids, so they were often working together. So I had to find a way for them to work in a way that was self-directed, in a way that was engaging for them, that provided choice, but also didn't bog me down too much, because one person, 35 kids at a time in a classroom and 20 laptops, that gets really overwhelming really fast. And so I decided I was going to come up with a strategy that allowed my students to work at their own pace, but also for me to monitor them. And apparently those are called playlists, which makes sense, right? So basically what I did was I did some backwards planning. What do I want my students to know? And how do I want them to get there? And then I came up with a list of steps of things that I would do, kind of like a mini lesson plan, but just really just a bullet list. And then I decided I was going to have the students work through those at their own pace. And as they did, I would check up on them. So they weren't able to move on to the next step until I was able to see that they finished the first one and that they did it to whatever standards I had provided for them. And so those then look like a piece of paper with it on there, but there's a few different ways to do it. But what it did was 2 things. One, it gave me lots of opportunities for formative assessment. So because of all of that checking in with the students and all those tasks they had to complete, I knew exactly where every student was at every day. While they were working, I was checking in on them. That also meant that I wasn't doing any grading at home, because I was grading right there on the spot with the student. So while they were working, I wasn't up in the front of the class teaching, because all the materials were there for them already. What I was doing was supporting them. I was figuring out who was behind and where, who was ahead and what they needed, and also what their grade was at any given time on any given assessment, because again, I was checking in on them every day. So instead of being up here like I am right now, I was among them, helping them with their playlist. So I really found that cut down time so much for me. Now, is there front loading? Yeah, but if you were, say, with a CLT, if you have the benefit of having other teachers, it's something you could all put together and utilize. So that could even cut down on the time. But even still, when you're able to front load like that, it's better than grading for hours at home. I taught 8th grade language arts, so that was my life for a while. So I understand what that looks like. And like I said, keep it front loaded. I used it for 2 things. I used it for learning and I used it for assessment, but you can start small and just start with one of those strategies first and see how it goes. My students did need time to adjust to that kind of learning, and that's okay too. So it might not be something that you do right off the bat, but it could be something that you start. And then as they earn that independence, they can get more and more and more. And you know your students better than anyone. So you'll know when they're ready or what they need to be ready. And they might need additional scaffolding. I use it in Canvas as well, and I'll show you what that looks like. But what I found really helpful was I created a document that had a list of all the steps at the top. It was like a chart, and every student in my class. And as I spoke to them each day, I would just check off where they were, or I would color code it depending on what it was. And so I just had a running visual of where every kid was every day, and nobody got left behind. So nobody was too far away from anybody else. And in the end, everybody ended up in the same place, whether they took a really long time to get there or whether they sped through, and I was able to say, hey, this looks really awesome. Now make it more awesome. Here's what you can do to make it better. So no matter what, they all started in the same place and ended in the same place. And it was efficient. So Catlin Tucker has some really great resources for building a playlist. This is an example of one of them. There's lots and lots in the wakelet that I provided for you. Playlists look different for every age group and every content area, and depending how big or small you're going, but they're amazing. Again, I was really excited to learn that they had a name. All right, so, not in there. Well, yeah, I am gonna show you. Now, I know not everybody uses Canvas, but I want to show an example of what it could look like in an LMS. So here's an example of Canvas, right? So I use something called prerequisites and mastery path, not mastery paths, requirements. So basically, looks like this, where it breaks down the steps. Each one is an assignment. And what they do is once they complete it, I can mark it as complete, and then they can move on to the next one. But they can't move on to that next one until I say so that it doesn't even open for them. So if you're somebody who uses Canvas, then using requirements is a great way to do playlists. It doesn't require you to be on top of them right there in front of them. So it could be something that they finish up at home, and then you grade or talk about it the next day and open up the next one for them. Or you can take off the requirements and just let them work through it, depending on your students and your needs. That's another way that they can look. So there's so many different ways, but I wanted to show what Canvas looked like for it. All right. This is the last strategy I'm going to show you before I actually show you what I did with them. So the last strategy, again, something that I didn't know how to name, was called a protocol. This is something that I use in my life as a very disorganized person. So I have to establish different ways of doing things for myself that are organized, or I just lose sight of everything, right? So something called a protocol. Basically, it's a system that you use in your class that you just keep using. So the students get really familiar with it. So for me, I'll show you what it looks like, but the workflow is the same. So the students know the process, and you're spending less time front loading that. You don't have to keep teaching them the process because they know it. Now, a simple idea of what a protocol looks like is students come to your room, they do a warm up, you guys do practice, they do a test, they leave. And you do that every day. Now, that's not reality, and it shouldn't be reality, but that's the simplified version of a protocol. Is just processes that the students get used to and that you're used to implementing. So it works pretty much everywhere. So I have a bunch of teachers who have designed their own protocols that they use in their rooms. I did one called, I didn't call it that, but I'm calling it now. Explore, analyze, and create. So that's the way that I had my students doing their projects. First, we explored the idea, then they analyzed examples and models of the idea, and then they created their own. So they were used to that. What I did is I took my kids, and this was when they could all sit together, and I had 5 groups of 6, and each one had 2 weeks to work through a particular lesson. And each group was working on a different type, and it would rotate throughout the quarter. But I'm telling you that to tell you that they knew after the first set of 2 weeks how the next 5 weeks would go, because they were used to it. They got used to first having to do this, and then they did this, and then they did this. We kept going. So I'm going to show you what that means. All right, so for these guys, I gave them a bunch of different project types. We'll go over what some of those are today. And first they just had to explore them. So a lot of times these guys don't even know what it is that they're producing yet. And so, or they might know what it is. They know what a video is, but they don't know what a good video is. Or they don't know different types of videos or podcasts or something like that. So I would get them really excited about it. I would first give them an example as the teacher of a really good, let's say podcast. I would give them an example of a really good podcast. We play it in the class. They get all excited about it. Then I would let them go work on their own. So together as a group, they would fill out something that looks like this. So I would give them, you can see at the top, I gave them 3 things that they had to look at. So those were my choices. I like to provide choice in addition to limited choice. So I would narrow it down, because especially with my younger students, some of these were 6th graders, giving too much options is like giving none at all. Like it's just not even, it's overwhelming. So I gave them 3 that they had to come up with, or that I gave them, and then they had to find their own. So they had to use some of the research skills we learned to find their own. And then they did some exploration of those different types. So for, say, the GBMS newsletter, they had to answer these questions. So that's where the evaluate came in handy. So they were looking at models, they were evaluating those models, and later they would apply what they knew to the project that they created. So for some age groups, I gave 1 and then they got to find 3. So it depended on the kids. That's another way that I was able to differentiate. But these were actually collaborative documents. So I didn't have students working on it individually. I had them working in pairs because, like I said, I had fewer computers than I had students. But now, if you're a one-to-one, then that makes it even easier for them to collaborate on these documents together. It could be an opportunity for them to share the things that they're finding and talk about the things that they're putting in that document. So having that kind of collaborative document makes it even easier to do the analyzing part, and it takes up less time for them as well. So if you find that they need to do that extra analyzing, it could be an individual thing, or they could collaborate if you'd like. After that, oh yeah, I'll show you what the, so this is what we came up with for, oh, what's this time? Where is it? I'm gonna show you that what it looked like for elementary. So on the elementary side, we lowered the number of videos that they had to answer about, and the questions were different, but it was the same kind of evaluating. So they were still asked to analyze the things that they were looking at, which is a really important skill for our students. So whether it was for a video or newsletter or podcast, these are the types of things we did for any project type that we were going to be working on, just to have the kids thinking about what they were creating. Oh, please stop doing it. All right. Now, I'll go over actual examples. And again, all of this stuff is in the Wakelet too, so you can see the examples I'm going over. And I'm going to show you some student examples.
That's what I was going to ask, and if the Canvas thing that you're so graciously going to share, what if we want to go ahead and try one of these, are there examples in there that we can leverage to, okay, versus having to go search for them? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in the Wakelet as well. So I provided in both places. All right, so for the newsletter that we were just talking about, after I had them exploring those newsletters, I then also had them choosing one and digging into it even deeper. So just choosing one and evaluating it more. And then by then, when I saw that, I knew that they were ready to move on to the next thing. This is what I had them do. I had them work in a group, so there were 6 of them, and I had them choose a theme for their newsletter. They were all going to build one together. I had them choose the theme, and that works for any content area. So a lot of times I had them choose something that was related to one of the content areas in our school. And then they each worked independently after that. They each wrote their own article for that newsletter and then came back together and put it all together in a newsletter. So they had to then change the design of the newsletter. They had to make sure it was cohesive, had a common theme, but they were able to work together, even though I was able to see their individual writing. So that was a way for them to both create and show me what they knew when it came to the writing piece as well. So this is an example from the elementary side. I'll go away in a sec of what that looked like. So this is a newsletter the students put together. You can provide templates for them as well. So that does make it helpful. Some don't like it, some do. So it depends on your students. And then they had a rubric that they worked off of for creating it. So some apps that you can use, if you're interested in newsletters, I loved using PowerPoint because PowerPoint allows you to layer things, move things around easily, and they were able to easily collaborate with it. So I loved using that as a newsletter option, especially because I can push out a template for some of my younger kids. But you can also use things like Wixie, Sway, or Google Slides to do the same thing if you want the students collaborating on things. So those are some ideas for using those. I can show you what some look like. One of the projects that I had students do was create a class website that we then added all our projects to throughout the quarter. And so this website has a collection of all, not all, but a lot of them. So there's some newsletters. Our students in here, they chose different templates. So like this one was the October project. And so they created one in there. This one, they chose to talk about things that were happening at GVMS. This one, they actually went and talked to different students and chose different themes about what was affecting them. So that one I found to be one of the most powerful ones because it really was relevant to the students. But I let them choose their themes. I never chose it for them. But it could be really helpful if you have if you're in a certain content area and want them to demonstrate learning on a specific target. And we have video. Video is something that students absolutely love. I guess none of you guys are strangers to that, right? They love watching them, they love making them, they love critiquing them, they love making videos of videos. They're into it. And so I had them doing that same protocol. There was one time where I really wanted to rein in how they were creating their video, right? I didn't want a TikTok. I wanted an actual video, like the models that I shared with them. And so I had the students work in pairs and they had to get a theme approved. And then they had to provide me a script. So the script was really helpful in narrowing down what it is their video was going to be about. I made sure that it covered the content that we wanted it to cover and that they were including what they needed. And they had to make a shot list that included locations in case they were moving around. So I knew where they were at all times and if it met the purpose of the video. And then they actually got to do the editing as well. So they loved these. I have like a gajillion examples. I'm going to show you just a couple of really cute ones. And the reason I want to show you these is because I think a lot of times we underestimate what they're capable of. But students are really capable of creating some amazing things. And I want to show you some examples, some young and older. All right, so this is a young student, this is an elementary student, and this is what he came up with.
One kitten is like cute. I like to fish. 3 Lego stormtroopers are so cool. 4 onions are bad. 5 fingers on a hand. 6 lollipops. My mom would not let me have 6 lollipops. 7 buttons are so cute. 8 slices of pizza I wish I could eat. 9 squares on a tic-tac-toe board. I really don't know why the ladybugs are there. 10 eggs. Careful, don't break them.
Right. So that was using a program called Adobe Spark, where the student was able to use templates to create what he needed. But I thought that was just adorable. And then there's another example. This is an explainer video from another course.
Hey guys, my name is Eduardo and my name is Anthony. Today we're making homemade ice cream at school. You need sugar, 1.5 cup, another 1.5 cup, 1.5 teaspoon, milk, salt, heavy whipped cream, and ice, and salt, and vanilla extract. First, put the milk in a small bag.
I don't think you need to watch the whole thing, but you get the picture, right? They're walking you through the steps. They're doing a good job. They're also doing a little bit of editing as they're going through the different processes, so you're not just staring at them the whole time. So they showed a lot of really good skills there. And in the Wakelet videos, there are some ideas in there, but there's also, I want you to see that there are some student-made examples. I have some on my website as well. Is this page? Yeah. Just want to show you a middle school version. I feel like middle school kids are a special breed. They are. It's a sock puppet one I wanted to show you. It's cute.
Hello, I'm your host, Bob. Today we're going to play a game called I'm Bob, What's Your Job? Our contestant is Mary Enid, our marine biologist.
Hello, please call me Mary, Bob. How hard are these questions anyway?
Not at all. It's easy peasy, cheeseburger cheesy.
Not at all? Don't you mean not hard at all?
Yeah, I mean that. Okay, question number 1. What does a marine biologist do?
Well, Bob, we help study oceanic animals, such as sharks. We catch them, put a tag on them, and then release them. We follow their movements and their behaviors, what they eat, what they do, and how they do it.
Wow, I never knew so much about this cluster. Is it okay if I ask you how much money you make?
You just did. Anyway, yes, we make about $62,000 a year.
Cool.
So for that one, I had students researching a certain career, and there's a lot of research behind it. And that was the product that they had chosen to make for it. So they had a bunch of different options. Some of them I've showed you already, like making a newsletter and things like that. But I thought that was cute because they didn't want to be on video. And so there are some really creative ways for kids to create videos without actually having to show their face, which not everybody likes. Some of them really love it. All right, so some apps that you can use. Some apps that you can use. Flipgrid is a really accessible, easy way to use video with students, and a lot of them are already very familiar with it. iMovie, if you use iPads, that actually has some really great editing on there as well. So if you wanted to do something a little bit more complicated. Adobe Spark was the example I showed you with the young boy who's counting to 10. It is very easy to use Adobe Spark. So there are some resources in the Wakelet on how to use it. I made some how-to videos in there as well. But as you can see, Canvas has a great studio program on there. There's lots and lots of free apps that you can use for creating videos for students. And chances are they probably have their own that they like as well. So they might be able to teach you some good video tools. I know my daughter does, and I don't even know how she knows that. So astounded sometimes. All right, so here's some ideas for different ways that they can use video. Sorry guys, there's like this button I have to push. It keeps unpushing. All right, so some ways that you can use video. They can do self-assessment, so they can actually do screencasts of things that they've done or made or explored and explain it to you. They can make video interviews. That they actually really like doing that, especially when they get to pick who they interview. Book trailers, stories from another perspective, creating a memoir or a personal narrative, being persuasive. I had one, so I work at a middle school where there was construction going on at a new high school next door. And one decided to do a persuasive video about the destruction of our environment and use the school as an example of how they were mowing down all the trees and took some gorgeous like videos and a montage. It was amazing. But he also did a lot of research and voiced over using Adobe Spark. It's in the Wakelet. Another thing that we did, podcasts. These are underrated. I think, because they seem complicated, but they don't have to be. So podcasts are something that I was able to have students do using iPads, or they use their phones. Some even use their computer. They didn't have to have fancy equipment, but it does exist. But what I had them do, using the protocol, is I just had them work together. So they had to do a topic that was approved by me. And they had to write a script that was part of the playlist that I then looked at. So there was also script writing that we went over, but and then they recorded on the app of their choice, or for some students, I gave them their choice. So again, depends on the student, differentiation and all that. But creating podcasts actually open up their minds to other ways to also consume media. So a lot of podcasts are great because a lot of them are research-based, or they're friendly for kids. So there's a bunch of links in here for how to podcasts that you can listen to, choosing ideas, planning them, recording them. And this is in the Wakelet. I feel like that should be on my shirt. It's on the Wakelet. But basically for elementary, they're really good at this because they're really good at talking. So they can explain something, or they can interview someone, and they turn out really good. They're really fun to listen to, and they love to listen to themselves play them back as well. So podcasts are fun. All you need is something that records. It doesn't actually have to stream anywhere. The idea would be to have them listen to podcasts, and there's some great ones for elementary students. It's in the Wakelet. And then they can figure out what they'd want to do with their own podcast. So some apps that you can use. GarageBand would be what's on an iPad. Audacity is another option. There's recording options on Wixie, actually Seesaw too, Flipgrid, Canvas Studio, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that records your voice is something that they could use to create a podcast. So
does Flipgrid have audio only version?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
All right, so I wanted to show you.
Did somebody from the online world say, if anyone is interested, my partner and I created a 5th grade math I can't talk podcast on Apple Podcast called Mic Drop Maths.
Mic Drop Maths. Okay, check it out, guys.
One more time. Mic Drop Maths. Okay, with an S at the end.
So for each one of these projects, and granted, you're not really seeing content specific stuff because I wanted to keep it general for you guys, but I used the playlist method. So they knew how to start. They knew that they were going to have to explore first, and then they'd have to analyze, and then they'd be creating. And along the way, I did provide resources for them, how-to videos and things like that. So I always think whenever I'm providing choices for students, I think, okay, what is the most simple way that they can produce this? And then I would provide them 2 more advanced options, like escalatingly advanced. And that way I met the needs of most of the students. And I also had control too. So because they couldn't move on to one until they finished the first one, if they tried to choose something that was below their level, or tried to finish early and just call it a day, I'd say, oh no, we still have a week left of this project. Here are ways that you can make it awesome. So I never just let them slide. And because you're constantly checking in with them, you're able to do that. And the kids who are behind, you know they're going to get to where they need to be, and you know what you need to provide to them because you're such in contact or constant contact with them. I found that to be the most powerful tool I had in my classroom, was the ability to really know where everyone was. I think, especially for secondary, when you have 150 kids, it sometimes seems impossible, but it's really not. It's just the way you structure your classroom. Now, can you do this 24/7? Maybe, but it depends on you, your style, but you can try it. You can try it with your students. You can use it occasionally, or for those big summative assessments. It's a great way to provide something that's not multiple choice. I wanted to show you, some of my students had to create a website. They maintained this website throughout the whole year. So they learned website skills. It was their responsibility on different days. And what they had to do was update it with the different projects. And then later, the students would have to go back to these projects and evaluate them based on what they knew about videos or podcasts or whatever. So it was always there. The teachers could see it, the community could see it. It was an authentic audience, and everybody knew whatever they created would be public. And so that was also another way to create an authentic audience and keep them motivated to produce something awesome. So there's a great selection here of the videos that they made, the podcasts that they made, there's a ton. And I always check them first. Never just let them post anything anywhere. I never ran into a problem, surprisingly, because the podcasters were, 6th through 8th graders. So you'd think. I did do a short photography one where they had to create a portfolio that had a certain theme on it when we were learning theme. There's newsletters, there's interviews that they conducted. Either they were tasked to interview teachers about something or students. So in the near future, we're going to have our students writing to either the superintendent or the principal about a policy that they would like to change. And they're going to do it based on research. So they're going to have to interview people. They're going to have to poll people. They're going to have to analyze all that data that they collect. And they're going to have to put together something cohesive in a way that that email could be, it could be written in a letter. It could be a video that they make. They can make a recording. So they're going to be provided choice, but in the end, they're all going to be doing the same thing. So they're going to be doing that in language arts, 8th grade in the upcoming months, right after the break. So there are ways to incorporate this with authentic audiences, with any group of students, if you know what it is that you want them to accomplish. So I always tell my teachers, we're going to start with the verbs. So we start with the verbs and their learning standards. If they have to analyze, then we'll look at different ways that they can analyze things. So that's when I'm going to bring you back to this. Right here. Is this screen still showing? It is. Okay. So this is a great thing to reference and come back to because it lines up different activities you can do with technology that align with the Bloom's taxonomy. Remember, we want to be like in the top 3 for something like a summative assessment, though these are also awesome. So there's foundational knowledge students have to have in order to do those higher level ones. And so you can do these types of activities for whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So think about the verbs that are in your standards and go from there. So there's some great tools out there for any one of these. Now, I have a lot in the Wakelet, but my advice, if anybody's ever looking for a tool, you could Google, my best friend. You can Google something that says educational technology tools for mind mapping. Things will come up, and then you can work with your colleagues or your ITCs, ITRTs, whatever, to figure out the best way to accomplish that. But it's a good place to start. So just knowing what your standards are and what you want them to accomplish, and they can definitely do it. Doing it in a way that's efficient is a way to ensure that you're not burning yourself out, trying to make it work. And it also puts more on the students because it's them who are learning. You know the stuff already. So the students can do it. They can do it at any level. But it just depends on what you guys know. So you guys already know what they're supposed to know. You know what they're like in the classroom. And so you can tailor it to work however you need it to in your class. But it's important that we are letting them be the stewards of their own learning. If they're not, then they're really just going to be repeating what we say. And that's not our goal as educators. So I definitely encourage you to explore that Wakelet or the Canvas if you have access to it, which is, I promise, the same as the Wakelet. And really just dig into how you can do that. I mean, I have time for questions if you guys have time to ask for them.
Thank you for all those
Yeah,
resources.
thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
huge.
There's a ton of templates in there. So
Yeah.
all the things that I showed you, like the collaborative documents, those are all in there for students as well. So you guys are welcome to use those. But yeah, just explore. I also, in the Wakelet, I have links to other Wakelets that are like, I have one Wakelet just for application tools, just for evaluating tools, just for creating tools. So I have a bunch of resources within the resources. So we inceptioned it, but it's there.
Thank you for sharing all that.
You're
That's
welcome.
You've done so much work.
So I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but every time I go to the Wakelet on my computer,
Yeah.
it's not the same as what I do when I scan the QR code.
Yeah.
So I'm missing things like the Canvas page isn't on the Wakelet.
So if you go to
Oh.
Sketch,
Yeah.
and download the document in Sketch,
Okay.
all the links are there, and it's like the Canvas link is there. Are you from Pennsylvania?
No.
Oh, well, the Canvas link is there and the slide deck there. I will say, Ms. Kraus, that everything for the Google stuff is password. You need to throw a password. Not a password,
yeah?
you need to log in.
Okay.
So in
that's
other
good to
words,
know.
I think you need to have a Google account to access most of the Google
I
templates.
feel like the template's on there.
Yeah. which-
Yeah, some of them aren't from me, so,
Okay.
I wonder if you
So
might need
if
to
you have a
create like a
Google
personal
account, you
one.
should be able to get into most of
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
But go to Sketch and download that doc.
Okay.
I'll double check the share permission
That's
on my
what,
side.
that's what is in Sketch,
Yeah.
what she's showing up.
Okay, yeah, and I looked at that earlier, but when
Okay.
I like put the
Good
URL
to
from
know.
the Wakelet
Yeah,
in here, it's just weird. It's missing like a couple
Okay.
things.
okay, so
So-
it might have been an old version that I forgot to update the link to,
Potentially.
most likely.
I'm soft power, so can we email you if we can't get access to this, like come to
Yeah.
Wednesday or something?
Absolutely,
Thank you.
yeah.
Somebody saying the tablet requires a password?
Oh, we didn't even end up doing that. Oh, we should have. All right, let's see. Do I have that?
Oh, she said, no, my tablet works.
It works?
In terms of podcasts, you said you have some elementary examples up there of like good quality
Yes.
for them to use as
Listen to,
models.
absolutely.
Okay,
So I have, my daughter's in 3rd grade now, but she loves podcasts. So
Yeah.
we've been finding them since she was in kindergarten. There's some really good ones out there.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So a lot of them are just completely fine to let them run loose. Other ones you might just have to pick and choose.
Okay.
Always listen to a podcast before you give it to them.
Yeah.
But that's any level. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Oh, hey, Chelsea.
So I've been working with my ESL teacher
Yeah.
at our school, at our elementary school. She's K through 12, so
Yeah.
we're small district, but she's doing a podcast with her